Good morning and welcome to the first fourth grade coaching session of 2014. Thanks to those who attended this morning and were patient during our technical difficulties. So today we're going to be talking briefly about the poetry reading unit and writing unit, as well as the Thinking Across Genres Part 2 and our current revising and editing invitations. And of course, our objective will be to make sure you understand what the students need to know and what they should be able to do by the end of each of these units. To start off with, the poetry reading, which begins Monday, or it's scheduled to begin Monday, it goes along with Tech 4.4, which is students understand, make inferences, and draw conclusions about structure and elements of poetry, providing evidence from the text, which is typical of all the genres, that they show the same thing, but we're looking at poetry. A specific fourth grade tech is 4.4a, which is where they need to be able to explain how the structural elements of poetry, such as rhyme, meter, etc., relate to the form that the poem takes, such as lyrical or free verse. Star question stems. These are the stems that appeared on the fourth grade test, the release test. And as you can see, the first one, which words rhyme in each stanza of the poem, is the only one that doesn't require making an inference. That's specifically related to the structure. They're understanding what rhyme is, the stanza, etc. But the rest of them, where it's the words blank, emphasize that blank, read these lines, whatever was in this, used in these lines shows that. What is the message? How does the speaker feel? All of these things require the students to not only be able to navigate through a poem, but be able to understand it and analyze it and make inferences. The only new lesson in the poetry unit, because it was revised significantly last year to address the needs in each grade level, this year we have added an author's craft lesson, which deals with, the choices the author makes in order to create a mood or to create a picture in the reader's mind, etc., etc. Those things, helping the students understand why they do things the way they do. And poetry, as we know, is very different. Our next reading unit, Thinking Across Genres, Part 2, begins on the 24th of January and goes for 10 days. And in those 10 days, we will be doing the 5 following connections. We'll be comparing 2 poems to each other. We'll be comparing a poem with literary nonfiction. We'll be comparing 2 nonfiction pieces. And then we'll compare a poem to fiction piece and a poem to nonfiction piece. A lot of stuff, and it's going to be happening pretty quickly, but we're thinking about that and ways to help address that so it's not as overwhelming. What we will be doing for this part 2 is the students will be keeping the attributes in mind that they learned in part 1 without the intensity of using that graphic organizer necessarily, but they need to be having those inner conversations with themselves and making little notes about the title or the genre, important details or events or issues in the text, and a quick summary. They have to understand what's the whole thing about, and any author's craft that they noticed or purpose, as well as what's the message or theme, or in the case of a nonfiction piece, what is the main idea. And then they still have those inner conversations that they worked so deeply on in part 1, but they go from now, you've been thinking about these texts, we're going to share this and have a discussion and more of a conversation amongst other people, partners or small groups, to even push themselves to think more deeply. Now, we do know that this is 10 days and with the potential of 10 different texts based on that, but we don't want to do that because that's just overwhelming. So we will be using some text with more than one lesson and more than one comparison. So that lessens the need for them to read and analyze 10 separate texts and understand that in the course of 10 days. So take a deep breath. It's going to be manageable. All right? And those lessons will be forthcoming shortly. We are working on them as we speak, and we will also watch for some emails. We will be giving some suggestions on some read-alouds as well to get them ready for this. So when the 24th rolls around, it's ready to rock and roll. Next, with the poetry writing, it's under the literary writing text, 4.16. And it's just simply writing text to express their ideas and feelings about real or imagined people, events, and ideas. The specific text under that strand that deals with poetry is 4.16b, where they will write poems that convey sensory details using the conventions of poetry. With this poetry writing, there's been no revision since last year. Again, it was changed significantly last year along with a lot of the units. And you should use the poetry reading unit, which starts this coming Monday, to help the students immerse themselves in poetry. So as they read poems as readers, have them go back as well and notice things as poets. So when it comes to the writing unit on the 24th, they've already had almost 2 weeks of nice immersion into the genre. And again, best practices revisited. Take your writer's notebook. Get ready for this poetry writing unit by creating seed idea lists and entries to use for modeling during the mini lessons, strategy groups, and conferring, and always model, model, model. So, and the revising and editing invitations, I hope everyone has been able to do that because we're writing those specifically for 4th grade this year. And it's helped to align to STAR and make sure our students have had experience with those types of things that will be appearing on STAR. So please make sure you're using those. And differentiated word study. Very, very important to keep this up because this is what helps not only with students' fluency and so they can comprehend more easily, but also be able to express themselves as writers. And this is so important because 4th grade has to be able to do both in STAR this year. And it's shown not only in research but in my own observations of students that are in a classroom where they have word study in place and not just a list of 8 or 10 words, but actual word study where they have sorts that they look through and they work on and it can apply to other words in their reading and their writing. Those students are being improving more quickly. Their reading levels are getting higher and their ability to express themselves in writing is much enhanced. So that's it for today. Our next session will be January 24th, and that topic will be the second part of nonfiction as well as crunch time review, 7:30, and look for that email to come. And you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.